You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into Mizzou That's Who, your podcast for Mizzou Athletics here on the KC Sports Network. As always, I'm joined by Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson. We're talking about a Mizzou victory. Tigers get back to 4-4 on the year. Got themselves a little winning streak going on. 2 straight wins for the Missouri Tigers as they get 2 straight conference wins. And a win against a top 25 team. Doesn't matter that they were number 25, still a top 25 win. Good game for Eli Drinkwitz and the fellas. Gabe, how are you doing? How was your weekend?
I'm good. It was a nice, relatively, drama-free game. You'd think the message boards would be drama-free, but then you wouldn't be very familiar with message boards, would you?
Very much so. Message boards always going nuts. Maggie, how are you? How was your weekend? How was your experience?
My weekend was great. I was actually, I know that people are not supposed to schedule fall weddings, but I had a good friend that got married in Estes Park, Colorado this weekend. So I was actually at the wedding, and he had an unplugged ceremony and it was in the fourth quarter. So, I had to keep up with those things. It was pretty crazy, but right as soon as it was over, I turned those notifications back on and it said that we had come out on top. So I was pretty stoked. It made my night and reception way better,
Of course, it's a lot easier to go to a wedding reception with a Mizzou victory. I think that happened to me last year. It was the Kentucky game, but that happened with me too. So couldn't watch the game for some reason. Like it wouldn't load on my phone. I could only get like the ESPN Gamecast, and following the Gamecast for that game was a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was just like I was very confused what was happening. But yes, no, I think we've all been there in those fall weddings. It's just like, man, why are you scheduling a fall wedding? I've told my
I think this was my first win during a fall wedding because I had a fall wedding during that Indiana game back in like 2014, and that was brutal. I mean, that ruined my entire night. So, getting the win, and like he's a huge Mizzou fan, and like all of his tables, like our table was called Harpo's and things like that. So it was a good way to like incorporate Mizzou and stuff like that to it.
23-10 was the final score of the game. A performance where I wondered what happened to the offense, as in what happened to the Mizzou offense and where did they go? Like who's playing offense for Missouri right now? Because Brady Cook, 224 yards through the air, 17-26, no touchdowns, but I think the big one, no interceptions. That was big. Brady Cook played well, and I think I tweeted out something like, if you're gonna praise the defense, you got to praise Brady Cook as well, because the offense was kind of the difference maker in this game.
They didn't make any mistakes. That's all it is. I mean, they scored 23 points. It wasn't dynamic. That was, I looked at it. Their yardage was 3 yards more than their season average. Their points was exactly on their season average. They just didn't hand South Carolina points. I don't mean that to sound, they can win a lot of games that way. Drinkwitz said that. Hey, what do you have to do? We just have to quit killing ourselves, basically. And they did, and they won the game.
I think Brady Cook finally was the game manager that we expected him to be. And I think he ran the game smoothly. I mean, we didn't give him away the game. We got bailed out of with a pass interference call on a pick he through. But other than that, I mean, the line played probably their best game of the year. Brady put the ball where it was supposed to be. So Dom Lovett was making amazing catches. Barrett Bannister, it was great to see him back and making those big conversions. So I really think that they just did what they were supposed to do. And when you do what you're supposed to do, you might not win big, but you typically will win.
Yeah, you beat teams you're supposed to beat, and I really think that this was probably a team Missouri should have beat. Spencer Rattler has not very good. We talked about this a lot too. South Carolina had a lot of confidence coming into this game because they've beaten some names, right? They beat Kentucky, which Kentucky is starting to not look like a very good team. They beat an A&M team that is starting to not look like a very good team. But coming into the year, A&M and Kentucky were two pretty big big names coming into the year. So they got a little bit of confidence with that. If they were able to stifle the confidence of South Carolina and look like the better team on the field, I don't even think that really looked close that Missouri looked like the better team on Saturday.
I think if those teams play 10 games, they both probably win 5. They're real similar teams. I think Missouri is better defensively. I'm not sure they're any better offensively. I think they're pretty similar. The quarterback stats coming into that game were almost identical for the entire season. So I think they played 10 times. They probably split 5-5. Saturday was one of Missouri's days, and that's the difference between being an 8-4 and a 4-8 team is just win the games that could go either way. Auburn is a game you play that team 10 times, you're going to win somewhere between 4 and 6. Florida's probably the same way. They'd gone 0-2 up until this one. They won that one, so that's good. Now they have another one that I know we'll talk about it later. I think is similar this weekend. I think Kentucky's a little better than those other teams, but by no means do you look at anybody except Tennessee on Missouri's schedule and say, well, that's out of the question.
And we talked about this last week with the South Carolina game, and we were like, things are always kind of weird, and they weren't super weird this weekend. But Kentucky's the same. Like those games most of them are decided by less than 10 points. So you just really never know what's going to happen there. And I'm glad we have them at home. I will say that.
Yeah, I think that'll be big as well. So we know Mizzou doesn't play phenomenal on the road. This is probably an anomaly when we talk about Missouri and road games, is them playing well against South Carolina on the road. They ran the ball very well too. Looking at the rushing stats, Cody Schrader, dude, was a workhorse on Saturday. Ran hard, ran downhill, 22 carries, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Brady Cook, second leading rusher, 53 yards on 11 attempts, 1 touchdown between some design runs, some scrambles like that. As we talked about, Brady's decision making was a lot better, I think, in this game, and really the big difference maker. Gabe, I'm curious. They had a change at right guard. I don't want to try to pronounce his name because if I'm just reading it, I'm gonna butcher it. But they had a change at right guard. I'm curious if you thought that had any impact on the offensive line as a whole. It's hard to plug one guy in and say, okay, yep, that's the change. But the offensive line did look better.
Yeah, EJ and Doma Ogar replaced Mitchell Walters, and they did look better. And he's one of those guys that personally I've been saying, can't get a look. Like, why can't we see what he can do? And I'm not saying that to say, see, I'm really smart. And I knew that putting him in, but I also thought that just watching the game, and I'm going to ask Eli something along these lines tomorrow, but just watching the game, that game plan looked different to me. The outside zone was mostly gone. It was Cody Schrader, take the ball and run forward. It was, I thought Brady Cook made better decisions on the zone reads, but we saw Luther Burden in the backfield a few times. We saw the entire first quarter and a half was basically swing pass left to Dom Lovett, swing pass right to Dom Lovett. And that's great. That's what this team does well. And it worked. And then when that happened, South Carolina came up. And then what do? We throw Dom Lovett 47 yards downfield. I thought the game plan looked different. I thought that looked like, yes, the line, I'm sure, played better, but I think Eli helped them too. And there's 2 ways to go with that. Maybe they're just kind of coming into their own and they figured it out. And I'm sure there are some people out there going, where was that at Florida or against Florida? Where was that, earlier in the season? And I don't know, maybe the guys weren't ready for it. Maybe he figured some things out, whatever. They figured it out. Good news.
Well, when you do that so many times too, and they kept giving the ball, like you said, to Dom Lovett and he's getting the edge, then the defense is protecting that more. And I feel like that was what was really allowing our run game to be as good as it was. And I mean, you saw it multiple times. When I watched the game, the South Carolina defense didn't know where the ball was. I would say at least 3 or 4 times. I mean, they were 3 tacklers on Cody Schrader one time and he didn't even have the ball. So I think they did a really good job at that.
I think too that when you talk about the just kind of the game plan like that, it does make it easier on the offensive line when you're like, okay, we have to pass block for maybe 2 seconds, if that, to get a swing pass out there, and we're going downhill and running the ball. Those are basically your 2 schemes. And when you say, okay, we're going to simplify it, this is going to be it right here. that makes it a whole lot easier. And if you're running the ball a whole lot, those defensive ends, those linemen aren't going to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback as quick when you are going to throw that deep ball to Dom Lovett. So I think, I mean, we've been talking about this on the podcast, right, all year, that like just all you got to do is just like get the ball out in space, get it out quick, run the ball. Running the ball has seemingly worked very well against the South Carolina team. And I think that that's kind of exciting. I don't want to get too excited, right? Because I don't want to get my hopes up about the offense, but it looked competent and it looked good. It was a good look, and that's exciting for what is to come.
I think they leaned into who they are. And
Yeah.
this is who I thought they were a month ago. But before the season, Drinkwitz made a lot of comments about, I got to avoid this bunker mentality. I got to, let them throw the ball, cut it loose. This team can't do that. And they've
Right.
proven they can't do that. Luther can't hang on to the ball. Nobody but Lovett consistently gets open. Brady's not super accurate. So what do you do in that case? You understand we've got a lockdown defense. Now, are they going to hold Tennessee to 17? Probably not. But they've held almost everybody else to, mid 20s, maybe even less than that. So, if we can find a way to get 17 points and not give them 7, we're going to have a chance to win the game. That's all you need. You don't have to go out there scoring 40. And some fans are probably thinking, well, isn't it a little bit concerning that we're 30 games in and it's still basically hand the ball off, throw short passes, punt, and hope? And yeah, that is, I'll be honest, it's a little discouraging, but would you rather have the coach realize that and do it? Or would you rather have him continue to trot them out there again and ask them to do something they can't do?
Right.
Yeah, Brady Cook's never going to be a quarterback that's going to put up 40 points. He's not a Chase Daniel, a Drew Lock. It's just never going to be that way. But like we said before, I would rather win 23-10 than lose like we have been losing.
Yes.
Right. And I think a part of it is too is you have to realize what you are as a football team, as you mentioned, Gabe. I think you can kind of gather that maybe Drink is starting to realize that they've got a good kicker too. So you just got to get within the 40-yard line. But don't get too close though. Don't get too close, or
right?
Or
It's
okay.
He makes the 12-foot putts, but the 3-foot putts are a problem.
At what point do you are you within so say you're in the red zone within 10, it's like a 4th and goal, and you're like, okay, but it's a 4th and long goal, right? What point do you say, all right, let's go for it instead of trotting him out there? Or do you just keep trotting him out there just because maybe he's got the yips,
Yeah.
maybe just something he's working through?
He's been good enough that I think you keep trotting him out there. But, I would be interested if they get in a situation where say they're up 7 and they're at the 9-yard line. Do you then maybe think about going for 4th and 2 when you wouldn't, where it's not going to, maybe not getting it isn't necessarily going to lose you the game, it's just,
Right.
but I won't say it's a problem, but it's a thing at this point in time.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we talked so much early in the season about like how lucky we were, and now I kind of feel like the Alabamas of the mid 2010s, where they didn't have a kicker to save their life, but they could still always score. So I feel like now we're kind of feeling a little bit that way, and I just don't know if it's a physical thing with him, if it's a mental thing with him. I think hard to see it go downhill like that.
I mean, he's made so many 21-yard kicks. It has to be something mental. It's just, it's probably in his head. But, I wonder if, there's a difference between the 21-yarder, like you're supposed to make that every time, right? When you go out there for a 51-yarder, there's nobody really expects you to make it, even though he's made it a bunch of times. I mean, there's still, if you miss it, nobody's going to crush you for it. And I don't know if that's it or what, but definitely up until the Auburn game, but really even up until probably last week, I would have felt very confident. If you're down 2 points and you get to the opposing team's 30-yard line, you're going to win the game if you're Missouri.
Right.
I don't know that I feel all that confident in that right now. And I think it might affect the way you call plays at some point.
It's definitely interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up because I had people tweet at me. I think it was right after they got the fumble. I think that was right after half. Spencer Rattler dove for it. They got the fumble. that's when he missed the 21-yarder. And I tweeted out, someone was like, it seems like they're playing to lose the game. And I was just like, they're playing not to lose. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't fault them for trotting out their all preseason All-American kicker, but the play calling wasn't phenomenal. It's almost like, all right, we've got a preseason All-American in our back pocket here. We can just run the ball 3 times and see what happens and see if we sneak into the end zone. They weren't trying to actively go for the end zone, which is another thing. It's just like, and I think the play calling, you bring that up, I think it's a great point. I think that does kind of impact the play calling. Sometimes you're like, okay, if we bring this guy out here from 25, is he going to hit or is he in his head too much? Do we need to try to do a couple strikes at the end zone before we bring him out there? Or do we need to get closer or maybe take a sack and bring him farther? So I just have to think about it.
Here's the tough part of being a play caller, though, because I said the red zone play calling to me looked a little like a coach that still didn't trust his offense and his quarterback.
Yeah.
But what if Brady Cook throws a pick? You know what people are saying? What are you doing? Why are you throwing there? You know, I mean, there's no winning unless it works.
Yeah. That's how it goes.
And fans are never happy. But we also have to remember too that the only reason, and everybody's like, oh, we should have beat Georgia. The only reason we were even close to beating Georgia was because of Harrison Mevis. I mean, we couldn't, we were on the 1 yard line and we couldn't score. So it's easy for us to, to criticize them, but we also have to remember games like that and be like, okay, you're also just 22 or however old he is.
Can we also talk about should have versus could have? Because I got a lot this week of Missouri should be 6-2 or 7-1. Well, no, you should have beaten Auburn. Definitely should have beaten Auburn. You could have beaten Georgia and Florida, but they played better than you in the second half and you didn't. So that's like, if you're saying Missouri should have beat Florida, then it's just as easy to say, well, South Carolina should have beat Missouri. That's kind of like, well, yeah, if you played a perfect game, probably you would have, but that's not how it works. So I think there's a difference between, and I think it's really hard. I don't know when maybe it's always been this way, but like, do you guys find yourself after your team loses a game, all you want to talk about is the way your team blew that game, not the way the other team maybe managed to win the game? So there's a lot of, we should have won that game, but the only game Missouri should have won that it didn't was Auburn. The other ones it could have, but they didn't play well enough.
I feel like you see that all the time, actually, in almost every fan base. And even reading the comments this week or the last few days for South Carolina Twitter, it's the same thing. I mean, they're all saying Mizzou didn't beat us, like we beat ourselves. So I mean, and the only game I can honestly, truly say that we beat ourselves was that Auburn game. I mean, you make a field goal and you don't fumble the ball, like you win the game. I mean, there's no other way to look at that
and
one.
Those right, but like you look at the Florida game, well, if we don't throw a pick six and we don't, well, yeah, but that wasn't like some freak thing that's never happened before. Pick sixes do that every now and then.
Well, and I'm guilty too, because I was like, oh, if they call that hands to the face, they don't get that 40-yard whatever. I mean, it's almost like human nature as a sports fan to look at things
it's not a Missouri
way.
Fan thing.
Yeah. No, it's just like, it's just a fan thing in general. And I'm just as guilty of it. And I do need to step back and, sometimes look at it. But then there's times like that Auburn game that completely like justify your feelings. And it's hard being a sports fan.
And like that one was kind of its own category, right? I mean, yes, they should have won that game. There's no arguing.
I had thoughts the other day of going back and watching that game, and I said, why do I want to put myself through that? I'd skip, obviously, the third quarter and the fourth quarter because it wasn't.
I mean, if you want to watch that game, just go on YouTube and look up punting. That's the game. You'll see everything.
Just 3 and out after 3 and out. Yeah. I was looking at Harrison Mevis's numbers from this year. 15 of 20. So it sits at 75% on the year. It's just some weird. I just think it's been weird. All of his misses, I was trying to see if I could find that on Mizzou's website. It doesn't look like they have it where I'm looking.
I know 4 of them are inside of 40, and 1 is from 50 something. But like this is the most kicks he's ever missed in a season.
Yeah, it is.
He's never missed more than 4 in a season, and he had never missed 2 in the same game until he did it this year.
Right. And I mean, he almost missed 2 on Saturday. He got,
Yeah.
I mean, he hit the goalpost, and then that
bang.
other one. I mean,
And
that other one was like
the
this.
51-yarder was amazing because it was like the hook that turned into a slide. Like South Carolina fans were cheering because they thought it was he
Yeah.
missed it.
It's that's kind of the same thing. When I watched the broadcast view of the 21-yarder, I thought he made it like originally because of because he like snuck it behind the post.
Mhm.
Because his ball was moving that way. I don't know if it was the wind there, but his ball was definitely moving that way. And so like it hit the back of the net, is like through the uprights. I was like, sick, he made it. And then they're like, no good. And I was like, wait, what happened? So it was one of those like double take ones. But we did get to see, Gabe, you mentioned it a little bit ago, and I kind of want to talk about this. We got to see Luther in the backfield a little bit. I believe he took a Wildcat snap, but he immediately gave it to Brady Cook, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I think we need to see more of Luther in the backfield. I want to see that Luther Wildcat back in action. Yeah, because it was so fun.
What
It was so
can
fun.
Hey, can you drive to Kansas and see if you can get me odds on Luther Burden throws a pass against Kentucky?
I
Because
will
like I
look
think
at it
that's
this
what
week.
I think that's what's being set up.
Yeah. I'm sure that'll be a prop once we get closer to Saturday. That will be on there, and I will make sure that I find that odd. So I will
Do
put
we
it down.
do we know if he has an arm that's capable of throwing one? I mean, he's
I mean,
an athlete, but
Red zone.
yeah, I've never seen him throw, but he because after the opener we asked him if he could throw and he said yes. Now I'm sure he wouldn't say no, but I just think okay, we saw him in the backfield, we saw that little Wildcat snap. Like coaches do these things and they run the Wildcat in week 1 against Louisiana Tech. I'm like I always remember Gary Pinkel always used to run fake field goals and fake punts in games they were ahead by like 3 touchdowns against, Northeast Louisiana State. And I'm like,
Yep.
why are you doing that now? Well, you're doing that now
That's
because
funny.
it puts it on film and it sets up something that you do differently in week 10. I mean, you run the bubble screen 14 times against 5 different teams so that this weekend you fake the bubble screen and somebody goes deep and you've got a wide open 60-yard pass because as soon as they see the bubble screen, they think that's what you're doing because that's what you do every week.
Right.
well, if we have any Kentucky fans watching our podcast, which we likely will, based on
The
all the South
opposing fans
Carolina
love
fans,
us.
yeah,
Right.
I know. Please don't tell your coach.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to be clear, like this is just me like rambling on the internet. Eli Drinkwitz does not share his game plan with me.
No.
Sure, Gabe.
It's a shame he doesn't.
Yeah.
But they do take on Kentucky. We can talk about that game now, unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about South Carolina. I think we got the best of that game.
The only thing I wanted to say about the South Carolina game is so the announcers of the game. I don't know if there's like a lack of preparation or what it is, but the amount of things that they said like incorrectly. I don't think Luther Burden was like ever called Luther Burden. I think he was called every other name. He I think he was called Mookie Cooper a time or two. He was I'm just like
the best was Ennis Rackestra.
Oh,
That was my
Rackestra.
favorite moment of the whole
I
game.
put that in my notes, and then they kept calling Marshawn Lloyd Marshawn Lynch, and I'm like,
Well, that's understandable, though. I get that.
but is it though? I mean,
A little bit.
I listened to the games on mute, so I have no idea what was going on, because I usually watch several games at the same time, but like that one's on the big one. I don't listen with like any sound for any of the broadcasters because I just think sometimes college broadcasting is hit or miss, to say the best.
Yes,
To say it nice. So I don't listen with any sound. So I had no idea that happened until you just said it. Yeah.
I will also say this: sitting in similar positions to where they sit, it is so much easier to see what's going on TV than it is sitting 100 yards above the field, and I know they have spotters and they watch monitors or they have binoculars, but like there's a lot of times where we're all sitting in the press box going, wait, who made that tackle or who caught that ball or who recovered the fumble? And we have to watch the TV replay to have any idea because you're so far away that, a 3 looks like a 5. And
Yeah.
they all kind of look the same from a distance. I mean, I can tell the difference between the fat guys and the skinny guys, but that's really about it.
you
And
can
that's
tell who plays
what
offensive line or
Right.
Who's Cody Schrader?
Generally. Yeah.
Right. And
I can
that's
tell
why-
who's the kicker and who's the holder,
It's the most important part.
And typically, you might not be able to tell the difference, but on Mizzou's
Right.
team, you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
You can't tell the difference. So let's move on to this Kentucky game. Kentucky opened up as 2-point favorites. The line has now moved to 2.5 already, in favor of the Wildcats. 11 a.m. kick again, and Columbia. They also had an 11 a.m. kick announced for the Tennessee game, which makes, Gabe, I believe you tweeted this out, 6 out of their first 10 games. 11 a.m. kickoffs. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It's great for me. I love it. I understand why fans would be irritated by it at this point. But also just win more games, man. I mean, that's the answer. I did text with my friend that covers Georgia. Georgia's playing its first night game of the season this week, by the way. So,
Oh, wow.
Oh, home night game. Yeah. Well, I feel like that was.
I think first night game at all.
No, they played
Was
us
it
at night.
night here?
Yeah,
Okay.
they played it.
Yeah, they played us at night. The early games are they're rough for me, but I'll just go up on Friday, and it just is what it is.
I found out I got friends that live in
I
Columbia
think-
still, so I can stay at their house.
Like-
there you go.
I think Missouri will have a pretty good crowd, probably. They have the last couple. I think people are interested at this point. They're 4-4. It's a competitive game in a series that, even though Missouri's lost more of them than they've won, they've generally been pretty good games.
Yeah. And I think they do have that working in their favor. They have Uncle Mo, a momentum on their side. And I think that's really big. We talked about last week with confidence with South Carolina. Mizzou probably gathering a little bit of confidence in getting that top 25 win, winning a trophy. That's a big deal. Drinkwitz made that a big point about if there's something physical to play for, we want to win it. And
He
they
should just
won it.
have one of his daughters should just make a trophy for every game, right? In elementary school art, bring it home. This is the Mizzou Kentucky trophy, and then he can be like, "That's what we got a trophy to play for this week."
If it works, it works. That's all I'm
Right,
saying.
exactly.
If it works, it works. No, so this game is big. I've been doing this all year, guys. You know this drill by now. I'm going to start counting games. I'm going to say Missouri needs to win one of the two between these two teams. And so we're penciling in New Mexico State, all right? They're bad. They beat some team that they shouldn't have beat this week. Don't ask me why I'm following New Mexico State football at this point, but I am. But they're not a good team. Mizzou should beat them. That is a should beat, not could beat. So let's look at the next three with Kentucky. Possible W. We'll dive into that a little bit more. Tennessee, they're not going to beat Tennessee.
Probably not.
Arkansas is looking like a possible W as well, depending on which Arkansas team shows up, which who knows at this point. But it's looking like they're going to have to win one of those three to get bowl eligible. Be big for the
I think
program.
this week's the easiest of the three, the most
I would agree.
winnable of the three. And I think, you're talking about confidence. I think the biggest thing that happened last week was that the offense scored 17 points in the first half. Because I thought last week might be the week where the dam just broke on the Missouri defense and where they just kind of couldn't keep it up. And that didn't happen largely because the offense gave them support in the first two quarters. And so they went into halftime feeling like, all right, you've already got a 17. That should be enough for us to win the game. And they played really well. So now I think you've got a team that's looking at a bowl game, feeling decent about itself. It's got on film an offense that is capable of giving support. I think the defense is locked in now. And so I don't fear anymore the, breakdown and the meltdown and the finger pointing that I thought maybe was possible a week ago.
And probably actually happened a week ago.
Probably.
I mean,
Yeah.
that likely
Fair.
happened. So you were probably spot on. I agree that I think that Kentucky is probably the most likely to be a win. I don't want to count out Arkansas just because,
No.
they play Liberty this week. You never really know with Liberty, but I think that Arkansas will get their bowl this week. So I'm not really sure how bad they're going to want to win. If we don't beat Kentucky, I could still see us winning that game because I think our guys will want it more. But We just need to take care of Kentucky and not even have to worry about it.
Absolutely.
Well, and honestly, I think they're going to go to a bowl game regardless at this point, because somebody pointed out to me yesterday, they have a top 30 APR. That probably means they're pretty close to the front of the line of 5 and 7 teams. Now, look, it's the difference of like the Quick Lane Bowl in Detroit and an actual like semi bowl, but I think they'll probably go if they don't lose out.
Do I have to follow through on my bet to go to a bowl if they don't win 6 games? Because I feel like I agreed I would go if we win 6.
What was the statement that you said, that you would go to a bowl game? You said you would go to the Gasparilla Bowl, I know.
No, I said the Birmingham. Yeah, is that
The Birmingham?
I said the Birmingham
It's in
Bowl.
Birmingham.
Because I thought that would be like the most likely that we would get into. But
Okay.
I feel like
If
should
you
only
didn't-
be if we win 6 games. Like I feel like if we win 5 games and they put us in a bowl, then it shouldn't count.
Well, if you didn't, I don't remember exactly what you said. If you had said I will go to a bowl game no matter what, I think you would have to go. But you said you'd go to the Birmingham Bowl. So if they somehow get Birmingham Bowl at 5 and 7, I think you're still obligated. But I don't think that's a likelihood.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll have to run the tapes.
Yeah,
We'll have
I
to go
did
back and
see
check.
one. I did see one possible prediction that said Missouri, Miami in the Birmingham Bowl. Now, look, the Birmingham Bowl can't really be very interesting, but that would at least be somewhat interesting.
I'm quickly Googling Missouri bowl projections to see if anyone has Missouri projected in a bowl.
Oh yeah,
just
there's a
keep
lot of
saying-
them. Some people have them in the Frisco Bowl. A couple people have them in Las Vegas, which I think would require getting to 7 and 5. But that's what I predicted before the season: 7 and 5 in the Vegas Bowl.
Yeah.
I'll commit to covering that one. They go to Vegas, I'm covering that.
The one I'm looking at from CBS Sports right now has Missouri versus Fresno State in the Frisco Bowl.
Yeah,
that's
would not
pool
cover.
team. West pool team versus pool team. That is in Dallas, Texas, is what they say. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what stadium.
It's in
Dallas,
Frisco,
isn't it?
Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, all the same. I looked up their API. They're tied for 27th.
Yeah.
So they're up. I would not have guessed that. I really would not have. So
I mean, APR is kind of like quarterback rating. It's a weird number that nobody really knows how to figure out. So
they're at 983 right now. Previous APR rank tied for 49th. So they've jumped up in the APR rankings. So good for Mizzou. Hopefully we got a bowl game. Listen, I've been lobbying for a 5 and 7 bowl for probably since the K-State game. I think that I've been lobbying for a 5 and 7 bowl qualifier. And
I mean,
my dream
your
might come
hopes were
true.
very low.
If you set the bar low enough, that's all I've been doing this whole season, just setting the bar just low enough that it keeps me coming back.
but I mean, I don't know. This is winnable.
Very
I
much.
think Kentucky, it's weird because Kentucky lost to South Carolina. I think Kentucky's a better team than South Carolina. But I looked this up. So they are tied. Missouri and Kentucky are tied for 97th in the country in scoring offense. Kentucky is 21st in defense. Missouri is 30th. The over-under is 46. I think, like, if you get to 21 points, you're winning this game, I think. Right?
Yeah. It's a race to 21. Missouri's defense, I
Yeah.
feel confident if Missouri scores 21 points, I feel confident in their defense to stop them.
agree.
And that's kind of where it's at is like
Flip side, if Missouri's defense gives up 21 points, you're going, well, I don't know how will they win this game.
exactly.
It's gonna be big to try to force turnovers on Will Levis, because I think he had 3 interceptions last weekend, threw for 98 yards. It was a very ugly day for the Kentucky Wildcats, and granted they were playing Tennessee. Tennessee isn't known for their defense, though. They're definitely a high-powered offensive team. So, I mean, if Tennessee can hold Kentucky, I, for the first time, might pick Mizzou to get one of these W's.
Well, and I mean, Kentucky's thing is they generally run the ball really well, and I think they still run it pretty well. But I think Missouri fans probably have nightmares about Chris Rodriguez running through them last year. That shouldn't be a big fear this year. I mean, Florida ran the ball really well in the second half against Missouri.
Mhm.
But other than that, like they've been pretty good against the run.
Yeah, Chris Rodriguez, I think, had just 64 yards against Tennessee. And so you can look at that stat. You can be, you can say, oh, he didn't play very well or whatever. But just like 2 or 3 weeks ago, he ran for 197 yards and 2 touchdowns against Mississippi State. So you still can't count him out, especially in a game where I think, was it Martez that said during SEC Media Days how big that this game is and how much they care about this game or this rivalry. So,
Yeah.
You're hoping that our A team shows up.
It's also nothing normal about Kentucky and Missouri games as well. So I don't expect anything normal to happen during these games, which is that's not groundbreaking analysis. It just feels like every time they play, something weird happens.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to seeing the meme of the Kentucky player on the ground and all of the Mizzou players mocking him. I feel like we're going to see that at least like 78 times this week.
I think this could be like that game. That was the game 2 years ago where Missouri had the ball for like 42 minutes, and I think Larry Roundtree had 612 carries in that game, and it was just Roundtree for 4, Roundtree for 4, Roundtree for 3. Okay, let's do it again. And they just, I think the number was Kentucky ran 36 plays in that game. They just never had the ball, and Missouri beat them 20-10. Like, I could see one side doing that, I could see both sides doing that, to be quite honest.
It's what we did to South Carolina. We completely controlled the clock in that game. Mm-hmm. I mean, the first, not the first drive, I guess we went 3 and out. Our second drive, I mean, it was great. If we can do that every drive, I think we went like 96 yards for the touchdown, took, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 minutes off the clock. I mean, if we control the clock, we can win that game.
And I think this game's big because I think this series is big for Missouri in that you're ahead of Vandy, right? You've beaten South Carolina 4 years in a row, so generally you're probably a little bit ahead of them. So right now, and I don't know, Florida's weird. I'm not sure where to put Florida in the whole thing, but right now you're kind of battling Kentucky and Florida for, okay, who can be that third team to maybe put themselves in position and I'm not talking about right now, just year after year, who can put themselves in position to be that best team outside of the top 2, right? To maybe position yourself for a run. And Kentucky's that team. Like, I know Missouri fans go, well, we want to catch Georgia or we want to catch Tennessee, but first you got to catch Florida and Kentucky. Mm-hmm. That's where things are at right now.
If you're looking at the SEC standings, they're in a tie for third.
Literally.
Right. But they are at third right now. According to what my Google tells me, they're in third in the SEC East. And we all know that is law. What I was looking at here is I wanted to compare these two quarterbacks, just kind of like passing numbers wise, because going into the season, Will Levis was like a big deal as a quarterback, right? And his numbers have not really shown that. 1,700 passing yards on 68% completion. It looks like Brady is, they don't have his passing percentage right here, but 1,600 yards on 145 of 222. 7 interceptions for Brady to 8 interceptions for Will Levis with 13 touchdowns. Obviously, he has the edge in touchdowns with Brady only having 6. But numbers-wise, it's been a rough year for Will.
Probably because he puts mayonnaise in his coffee, and it just probably has
you
not.
Did say that.
Hasn't. No, he showed it.
I know, but I don't believe he does that regularly. I think that was a bit for social media, right? Nobody does.
I hope it was for his own safety and his own sake. That I hope that he doesn't regularly do that.
But I think he became a thing because of the mock drafts and all that. Mm-hmm. The NFL draft people say he's a first rounder, and we make this mistake. That doesn't mean he's the best college quarterback. I mean, I think pretty much everybody would say the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL right now are Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen.
Right.
I don't know that either one of those guys was a great college quarterback. I mean, I remember when Josh Allen was drafted where he was, I said, thank you. Buffalo's never going to be a factor now. Right. Because I just went based off it. Well, it's 2 different games, and they just, it's about situations and what's around you. And also the NFL, like, if you need a quarterback, you panic and take guys in the first round. I mean, Mitch Trubisky becomes the number 1 overall pick because, well, I don't know, we need a quarterback and there's not really a great one, but we'll take this guy because maybe he'll be great. And I feel like Will Levis has benefited from that a little bit. I mean, he is not CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. Now that doesn't mean he's not a good quarterback. And maybe he'll be a great NFL quarterback, but he's a like above average college quarterback so far, I think.
Yeah. I don't think he's as good as Hendon Hooker is. I think Hendon Hooker's really come onto the scene this last year. I don't think going into this year that people really talked about Hendon Hooker as a top legitimate draft pick as a quarterback, but he's really played himself into that. Going back to Brady Cook's percentage, I did the math real quick. It's 65. So he's at 65. Will Levis at 68. It's interesting. I think it's really, this matchup is incredibly interesting. We talked about, I think before we started recording that, I've been saying if Will Levis doesn't play, I think Missouri has a real shot to win this. Will Levis is probably still going to play, and I still think Missouri has a real shot to win. I don't think it really is going to matter all that much. So if you guys are ready, we can predict this game if you'd like.
Okay. I want to go last because I don't really know.
Okay.
I'll figure it out while you're talking.
Would you rather do against the spread or score?
I feel like a 2-point spread. Like, I'm not going to pick somebody to cover that I don't think is going to win.
Yeah.
That's fair. Okay, so I'll start. I think Missouri is going to win this game. And I think that they can take the momentum from South Carolina into this. They have shown a competent offense. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. I think they're going to keep the ball on the ground with Cody Schrader to kind of open some stuff up on the sides like we talked about earlier. And I think the defense shows up. It's at home. It is 11 a.m. kick. But, I mean, nothing beats that environment. If the zoo is packed and the zoo is rocking, I have no doubts that this will be a Mizzou victory. I think it's going to be a close game, though. I think it's a 24-21 victory for the Missouri Tigers. So thank you, Harrison Mevis.
So completely agree. I think Mizzou, for some reason, is going to want this game a little bit more. I think that I think Kentucky's running on fumes, and I think Mizzou might be running on momentum right now. I'm also going to say 24, but I'm going to say 24-17 Mizzou.
People listening to this should want me to pick Kentucky because I've been wrong on Missouri virtually all year long.
We all have.
I picked Missouri. I'm going to go 17-16, and they're going to win it because at some point they block a field goal.
See, now I feel like you're just having fun now.
I enjoy it, but
no, that's.
I mean, like the bet in this is the under. I just don't see this game getting to 46 points.
Absolutely. I had it pulled up. Missouri's hit the under, I think, in almost all of their games this season, besides the Kansas State game, which Kansas State single-handedly beat the over in that game. So it doesn't necessarily count.
Probably did that again last week, by the way.
Yeah.
Came pretty close.
Pull it up real quick here. Yeah, it is the under. The under at Faurot Field is 1-3, or is 3-1 this season. The under is. So 43 points is what that's set at this week. Mizzou is 2-3 in their last 5 against Kentucky. Don't have all the good fun nuggets out yet just because it is just a little early in the week. With all of that, but the under in Mizzou's last 5 is 5-0. So there you go.
I also this thought occurred to me this morning. I know that we're talking about this all from the Mizzou perspective. I think this is kind of big for Mark Stoops because look, like his job is in no danger at Kentucky, right? He has built that thing into something that it hasn't been literally since Bear Bryant. But if you backslide a little bit and you start losing to Missouri and or South Carolina regularly, like I kind of start to wonder if he's got a little bit of, hey, Matt Campbell, maybe you should have taken a different job I think he's hit the ceiling at Kentucky, right? I don't think he can get better than where he got it a couple years ago. And once you get to that point, it's pretty hard to maintain that.
Well, and these jobs are popping up. Jobs like
Yes,
jobs like the Auburn job that opened about a couple of hours ago from this live broadcast. So.
John Cohen fired, literally the first thing he did. I don't even think he had signed the contract before he fired Brian Harsin. It was literally like John Cohen officially the Auburn AD, and then like 43 minutes later, it was Brian Harsin out as Auburn head football coach. Just had to hire the AD and let him make that assessment on his own, right?
He didn't even get his office fully unpacked before he made that decision.
He may not have been in the office yet.
I
He may have just stopped by Harsin's on the office on the way down the hall and been like, "Yo, Brian, dude, you gotta go, man. This isn't working."
And we talked about it. Auburn's paying a lot of money, $35 million in terms of buyouts to Malzahn and now Harsin. But you're talking about one of my favorite quotes that's come out of this college football season is Coach O, when he was told that his contract was getting bought out, he said, "Tell me when and what door, and I'll be out of here." So shout out to those guys for getting paid to get out of town.
Yes,
that's the greatest job right there. It's
why I want Texas A. Well, there are a lot of reasons, but I want Texas A&M to lose every game the rest of this season, just to test. Like, is there any possible way they would come up with $86 million to tell Jimbo to not work?
There's a rich enough people down there near College Station that are Texas A&M fans that if they want that money, they will get that money.
If somebody paid that buyout, I think they should be arrested, and then all of their assets should immediately be sent to a charity. Like, there are so many more things you should do with $86 million than pay Jimbo Fisher to go back to his ranch and not work.
And when they're using a lot of that money in the recruiting classes, but
it's not working though.
Yeah, it's not yet.
Don't look now, but Mizzou's having a better season than A&M. People aren't talking about that enough.
I mean, A&M plays Florida this week, and one of them's going to be 1-5 in the SEC.
That's incredible.
It's rough.
Florida, I believe. Oh no, they're not. They're 1-4 in the SEC right now. Vanderbilt 0-4. I remember when at the SEC media days when they said they were going to win 12 games or something like that. The Vanderbilt head coach said in a couple of years they're going to be winning a bunch of games.
For real?
Yeah, he did say that.
Did he mean like in the same year, or did he just mean at some point they will win 12 games?
I think he's saying that like. He said within the next couple
they probably
of years.
will. It might take a while, but they'll win 12.
Yeah, cumulatively.
They've got 12 wins in them as a program.
12 if they play Hawaii every week, they got it. They got it in the bag. That Hawaii game, I think, skewed a lot of people's thoughts on old Vanderbilt. But I think that's going to do it for today's show. Got to give a shout out to Charlie Hustle, outfitting us with some good Mizzou stuff. If you're heading out to Furrow Field, make sure to grab some Charlie Hustle stuff. They got more than just Mizzou. CharlieHustle.com. Go check them out as well.
I think they have a sale going on right now, by the way, because I ordered some just last week. I know they had a free shipping one and a BOGO, so I bought like 3 new shirts. So you guys should do it too.
Got to take advantage of the sale. Got to take advantage of the sale with them. They're soft, comfortable shirts. Love to wear them. I was wearing my Charlie Hustle shirt out there when I was at the Mizzou Vanderbilt game. And you guys need to bully me to go to the Mizzou Kentucky game because I'm still on the fence about it. Mizzou, I guess, does, or the Chiefs do play on Sunday night. So
last time I know some good tailgates. You can come tailgate with me.
Last time I didn't go to a Mizzou game the day before a night Chiefs game, I got harassed. So maybe I needed to change.
You're going to get harassed regardless. So,
very true.
Whatever.
Very true. So appreciate you guys listening all the way to the very end of this podcast. We appreciate that. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube channel. Follow the podcast feed and share it with your friends. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the podcast. So thank you guys for listening. We will catch you next week after a Mizzou victory.